Good afternoon.
What is up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Kevin Svenson. Today is January 29th, Wednesday, which means it is FOMC day.
Good afternoon.
Jerome Powell has already spoke. Taking a look at the FOMC press release, you can see their decision was to hold rates at 4.25% to 4.5%. So rates remain unchanged. That's the big news of today, is a pause. The key points from the press release from the Fed today: the committee will continue reducing its holdings of the Treasury securities in agency debt and agency mortgage-backed securities. So the Federal Reserve balance sheet runoff will continue and rates will remain unchanged. So this was a unanimous vote from the Fed to keep the funds rate in a range of 4.2 to 4.5%. The decision came amid increasing uncertainty about inflation and keeping downward pressure on the economy to ensure inflation cools to the 2% target. Now, currently inflation is pretty close to that target. And what we learned during Jerome Powell's speech today is that the economy is doing well. And so they're not in a rush to make policy less restrictive. They don't see a reason to rush into reducing rates. If the economy is doing well and people are able to keep their jobs, then there's no reason to release a bunch of pressure off the economy. They're going to use the good economy as long as they can to keep policy more restrictive to ensure that inflation is under control. Jerome Powell today discussed that they really need like a 12-month window of data to truly know if inflation is under control, because there is seasonality in inflation. And just because right now during this season it seems under control, it doesn't mean that it can't elevate in the next quarter after that. So they want to take it slow and not rush into things. And also, a reporter asked Jerome Powell if he's going to respond to Trump's demand to immediately drop rates. And Jerome Powell was basically just like, no comment, not going to even entertain this at all right now, not even going to listen to Trump. We're just going to follow the path that we're on, because they believe that their policy is currently in line with the economy and expectations. So today, Jerome Powell in his speech basically just confirmed that things are, in line, in balance. The market expected there to be a pause. That was highly anticipated, no surprise. And so what we saw was that after Jerome Powell's speech, things began to shoot to the upside. Bitcoin on the lower time frames was playing out what looks like an ascending triangle. If you look, higher lows, flat resistance, that is a bullish ascending triangle, which we are now breaking to the upside out of. This is the 1 hour chart. These are the lower time frames. And if you look at the textbook way to get a target from an ascending triangle, what you do is you measure the height of the triangle and you place it on the breakout zone. And so if you were to do that for Bitcoin right here to the support line, let's just mark it white, make it a little dotted so it's easier to see. And then we extrapolate that onto the breakout zone that we just got today. And our target in the short term on the hourly chart is actually 107,500, which would take us right up to the all-time high zone. Not quite there, but just below the all-time high zone. If we go to maybe the daily chart, we can see, does that line up with any daily candle closes? No, it would actually be above all these previous daily candle closes. Let's go to the weekly. It would also be above all weekly candle closes. And now that we're here on the weekly chart, I guess first of all, 107,500 is the ascending triangle breakout target. But also, I want to mention that the highest weekly candle close ever was at 104,355. So if Bitcoin closes this weekly above that price, it'll be the highest weekly candle close in Bitcoin history. So needless to say, Bitcoin's doing extremely well, despite the sentiment that you guys may have been feeling or seeing across the market. All of that sentiment is mostly to do with the altcoins, because I can't imagine why anybody would be upset about Bitcoin. If you go to the RSI, and then we go ahead and open up the monthly chart, Bitcoin's monthly RSI is pretty low. It's actually near a breakout. If you mark up that previous high, Bitcoin's monthly RSI is nearly about to enter another expansion phase towards its ultimate monthly RSI target. If you look at the previous cycles, the monthly RSI usually topped out in the 90s. And looking at some charts with longer history, you can see that Bitcoin's monthly RSI peaked had a double top peak, even though the price didn't double top in 2013-14. The RSI had a double top in 2013-14, but that second high was a much higher price. So the monthly RSI peak is not necessarily the actual top, but it does show that the cycle is overheated. So for Bitcoin right here, what I'm looking for in the coming months, the next several months, is actually a break of the monthly RSI, horizontal resistance, that blue line, and then head up towards our potential target here of 86.5. And from that point, the monthly RSI could pull back and then go in for a lower high. But on that lower high, the price hits an even higher high, right? So keep in mind, it's not totally straightforward, but I think this at least gives you an idea on why we do have room to move up in this cycle. It clearly didn't just begin, and it's also not coming to an end. We're in the middle, and we're near the really exciting part. And the really exciting part of the cycle is usually 40 weeks after the halving. If you go back to previous cycles and you look at this indicator, the Bitcoin halving cycle profit indicator, 40 weeks after the 2012 halving, things got really bullish. And then the bear market begins 80 weeks after the 2012 halving. Move over to 2016 halving, 40 weeks later, things got really bullish. Bear market begins 80 weeks after the 2016 halving. Go over here to the 2020 halving. Things were already really bullish until the 40th week in the last cycle. Although the altcoin cycle began at the 40th week. Bitcoin sort of went sideways here, but altcoins got most bullish at this point. And then 80 weeks later, the bear market begins, just like the other cycles. The timing is almost exactly the same. Why is it that in the last cycle we hit the top, the first peak zone at the 40th week? Well, it's because we doubled the money supply, right? So of all the dollars ever printed in US history, after COVID, we doubled all of that. I mean, it was like insane, right? And so prices rose, inflation, prices went up really rapidly. Fed policy is still restrictive because the economy is doing well. So they feel that they can be restrictive. So that's putting a little bit of a damp, it's dampening the cycle quite a bit, I would say. Not necessarily for Bitcoin, but especially the altcoins have been feeling the effects of that. But usually at the 40th week, global liquidity begins to rise, begins to tick up. Go to the next halving. Right here, the 40th week after the halving, global liquidity breaks out. Huge surge in global liquidity. And then 80 weeks later, after the halving, global liquidity begins to pull back. Bear market. Over here, 2020 halving, 40th week. Here, we are seeing a fairly big rise in global liquidity, though the most of the increase in global liquidity happened well before the 40th week because of COVID and the money printing. And so it's a matter of global liquidity. That's really what the halving cycle profit is all about. And so if we go over here, we look, has global liquidity already seen a humongous pump that would signal that we should be expecting a top here? Actually, not at all. Not at all. We just started to break out. We actually just retested the 2022 levels as support here, basically, for global liquidity. No significant rise yet, which means there's a lot of room up for global liquidity. There's a lot of room for global liquidity to rise. And again, usually when global liquidity is rising, Bitcoin is rising. So I think that we're going to get probably another major parabolic swing to a much higher target before this parabolic trend actually ends. So I'm very bullish. 124, 134, 142,000. These prices seem very possible to me. So for now, that's what it's looking like for Bitcoin. Altcoins usually do best at the 40th week. This is the total three, the altcoin market cap. And you can see, well, actually, let's just go to the others chart because it has more history. You can see in 2017, right going into that 40th week, we start to break out really bullish. And in the last cycle, Bitcoin starts to top out on the 40th week. Altcoins go to the moon, and then they go even higher later. And so the altcoins are usually doing great in the 40-week zone. So we're pulling back right here, but this could be a great opportunity before global liquidity rises and things start to kick off for alt season. I do think it's coming. There's never been a cycle where we haven't had an alt season, so it's very likely to happen at some point. It's been slow. Again, policy has been restrictive. Interest rates are at the highest level ever in crypto history, right? The last time interest rates were this high was 2007. I do think things are going to change as we move on towards the end of the year. In this cycle, policy is very restrictive at the beginning and is likely going to loosen towards the end. So things start off kind of slow, and likely by the end of the cycle, it'll pick up very quickly. In the last cycle, I mean, we had basically one pump from 10K to 65, and that was really it. Forget the 69K slightly higher high. This was really it, right? So in the beginning, it was really quick bull market because policy was not restrictive. We had quantitative easing. And so it's like kind of in reverse this time. Start off the cycle a little bit heavy from the Fed, end it on a lighter note, on a higher note. So that's how I see things playing out, guys. We are at the 40th week. Usually things get really bullish around this point in the cycle, right? So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, smash the like, subscribe. If you enjoy this kind of content, be sure to hit the like button, subscribe. Did I already say that? Comment below your thoughts. Be sure to support this channel by joining Patreon, and be sure to sign up with Kraken Pro, which is the platform you guys see me use in all these videos. Right here, I do have a tutorial for Kraken Pro. If you haven't signed up yet, the tutorial should be popping up on this screen in just a second, and I'll see you guys in the next video.